This is Game On, discussing the biggest games and all the latest sports news with Johnny Montalbano and Hank Indictor on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Game On the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. I'm Hank Indictor, and join with me again today for episode 60. Hard to believe we've gone that long. Is Ben Kruse, and obviously you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameOnETB, and on Instagram at GameOn_ETB. Follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network at ETB Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And, of course, follow our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network. Please hit subscribe down below if you have not done so already. And, of course, make sure you follow the website, etbpodcast.com, for great blogs and more information as well. And you may have heard that yours truly will be taking control of the blogs department on that website, too. So keep a lookout. There will be a lot of good stuff coming on. But without further ado, for episode 60, and again, I can't believe it's gone on this long, I am joined by Ben Kruse. And Ben, how's it going?
I'm doing good, Hank. I'm glad to be back on for my second episode of the network, and I'm excited to talk more sports with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. And why don't we start off by talking about the big thing that's gone on in the NBA, and that is the draft. And obviously, a lot of the talk in the NBA draft was centered around this young French prospect. You may have heard of him. His name is Victor Wembanyama of the San Antonio Spurs. And Ben, what do you think the future holds for the San Antonio Spurs with this pick?
I think the Spurs are definitely going to be in great hands. You know, you look at a team that was in essentially one of the most high prolific type of teams that was so great for so long, and then they kind of got through a spurt where they lost a lot of their great well-known players. They went more on a younger route, so they're pretty much more in a rebuild for so long. So eventually, when you're in a rebuild, and eventually when you're not going great and you're kind of bad for a couple of years, you know, you get right up in the draft overall lottery. And the Spurs are fortunate enough when it came to the lottery that they're the first one overall in pick, and they're now fortunate enough to take essentially a 7-2 center, Victor Wembanyama, French overall player, and looks like from pretty much everybody that's been talking about him, he's going to be like the next big thing, coming up. So deservedly enough, he was the first overall pick in this NBA draft, and I'm really excited to see this guy play. You know, this could be the next step. I wouldn't say the next Yao Ming per se, but kind of the overall body of work and just the overall size. We don't get many type of sizes of players like this, so it should be really exciting. I'm really fascinated to see how he plays with the young team this year in San Antonio.
Now, Ben, let me ask you this next question. Who do you think the biggest winner of the NBA draft was, if we're talking about team-wise?
I'd probably go with San Antonio. I mean, you get the best, I think, overall ready type player in terms of Wembanyama. I know in 2 and 3 in terms of the overall draft, you could say Brandon Miller or Scotty from that they took from Portland. So I mean, those first top 3 overall picks are great and stuff like that. But I think specifically the Spurs, you look at their team, you know, they get a big young center. I know that the Spurs in the past overall drafts, in terms of guys that they might have hit on, a guy like a Tim Duncan, who has turned out to be one of the best players ever. So, I mean, I'm not saying Wembanyama is going to turn to be like that, but I think specifically, I feel like the Spurs won the overall draft, just not only because they got one, but I think that they got the best overall player that I think is going to be ready to kind of make that next step.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree with that. I think the Spurs did win for sure, but another team that I want to point out that had some big success, we got to go with the Houston Rockets. I mean, there was a lot of talk. Hey, are they going to take Cam Whitmore, or is it Eamon Thompson? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah, that sounds right.
And
Eamon Thompson.
There was a big debate over who they were going to take, but as it turned out, they took Thompson early on with the number 4 pick, and then somehow Cam Whitmore slid down, and they were amazingly able to grab both of those guys. And now you have Ime Udoka becoming their head coach, and I know that's kind of a sore subject for you over here, Ben. But
it's okay. I hope he does well.
Yeah, I guess I do too. But what do we think of the Rockets' chances next year? I mean, obviously, I don't think they're going to be good right away, but I think that's a team that could be on the step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think they're going to be, they've done for a while. They got a Steven Silas, who's a really young coach, but I just think specifically that they just needed somebody that could, teach these guys, as a young team, a great coach specifically, and Ime Udoka, who happened to be out there on the job after the unfortunate news of what happened after the Celtics play the Warriors in the finals a couple of years ago. And I think specifically when the Rockets hired Udoka, obviously I think it came at a cost in terms of the stuff off the court, but the stuff that he does on the court, he's a defensive-minded first-type coach, and they have some young up-and-coming players, Jalen Green, Jalen Smith. They have Sengun, who's the center. And so they have a lot of great up-and-coming players. So I think specifically for Ime, the Rockets I don't think are going to be in contention anytime soon, but I think that they're going to be a team specifically that, I think, over the course of a couple of years, you're going to start to kind of see the growth. And I think over time, if they keep on going, becoming the overall, young future team that I think a lot of other teams will take a look at, I think that they're going to get more recognition. And then with that more recognition, who knows that it could be turned out to potentially be a free agency destination, what it might have once was, obviously, when Harden was there for all the years.
Now, let's go over to the other side. Who would you say is the biggest loser of this NBA draft?
I mean, I think that the Hornets, I think, as a whole with Brandon Miller, I think Brandon Miller has a lot of upside specifically, and he's great talent, but I think that there's stuff off the court. I mean, he essentially idolizes PG as the greatest of all time. I mean, I don't know in terms of what he's thinking there. He also thinks that I obviously know that confidence is confidence, but he thinks that the Hornets can win the NBA Finals this year. So, I mean, I don't know. Something just kind of turned me off with that. I mean, I'm not saying, PG's a great player. To put him in the greatest all time, I think is a very, you're just delusional with that. And I think with the Hornets specifically, you look at the top tier contending type teams, the Hornets, I think, could be, a good 8 to 10 seed, but let's be real here. So, I mean, I get the confidence. I understand he's coming in and he has to be the guy. But, you're a young kid. I feel like as a young kid, you just have to come in, just be yourself. Don't try to think what others maybe think about you. And so, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I felt like specifically, Hank, that for this draft, a lot of teams could have been losers in a way because I thought that there could have been some trade drafts in terms of this. And I felt like not a lot of teams drafted before free agency, which is going to start on Friday. Something kind of like the AJ Brown situation, in Philly. That didn't come from coming for a free agency or from a deadline. That came from the draft, and where you're able to trade a couple of your picks. And so I'll talk about in terms of maybe the Celtics. I mean, the Celtics, Brad Stevens had pulled some Bill Belichick at him at the NBA trade draft, where essentially I feel like he traded back and back and back, and I'm like, man, he must have been hanging out with Bill Belichick too much. So I guess that was the case there. But we finally took some guys later on. I think maybe like the 4th or 5th round. But yeah, I mean, you could say a couple teams could have been losers in the way in terms of you felt like as kind of the draft and the rounds went on and on and on that you maybe could have stacked on some of those picks and maybe traded for a position in need leading up to the offseason and the free agency coming up.
Yeah, I thought Scoop was going to go to the Hornets, but Brandon Miller seems like not a bad alternative option. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, and I think the question remains: how will what is going to be next with Portland and the status of Damian Lillard and Scoot Henderson? And we'll talk a little bit about Damian Lillard in a little bit, but overall, yeah, I think my biggest winners definitely for sure would have to go to the Spurs for an obvious reason, because let's face it, 7'3" Frenchmen who have insane athletic ability don't exactly grow on trees. And this is actually a team that, first, mastered international scouting when it came to great players. So it kind of makes sense that he ends up in the Spurs, having to follow a lot of footsteps, although we'll see how his experience goes with playing with Greg Popovich. I know lately he's had some of those old man yelling at cloud moments, but I mean,
Oh, yeah.
This is a guy who's been around for like a quarter century at this point as the coach of the Spurs. And in my opinion, he's one of, if not the greatest coaches of all time. If
Definitely.
I ever were to do an NBA coaching Mount Rushmore, I think he's probably on that list. But in any event, I also have to go with the Rockets because, again, Whitmore and Thompson, like, there was a whole debate and you somehow got both. Like, how can you not consider them to be a big winner, right?
100%.
And, as far as the biggest loser goes, yeah, the Pelicans tried to trade up for Scoot. Didn't happen. And, well, this isn't really NBA draft related per se, but I mean, when you have those circumstances combined with the fact that you're dealing with the Zion Williamson controversy,
Yep.
yeah, no, I'm sorry. It's hard for me to not point and laugh at your failure at this point, even though that's a franchise that has kind of been one of those down in the dumps for teams for a long time. But those are essentially my key takeaways from the NBA draft. And I think the biggest, although I do have to say, though, the teams that made the biggest noise during this draft were the Celtics and the Wizards. And, why don't we make this a good segue to the trade? So the Boston Celtics and the Washington Wizards were the two teams in this big deal that sent Boston Kristaps Porzingis. And Ben, I think the first question I have to ask you, since you're the Celtics fan here, is do you think that this trade increases the Celtics' chances at an NBA title this year? Because I remember it looked like the Celtics had really won this trade, but then of course they couldn't trade Malcolm Brogdon, so they had to switch it up a little bit. And unfortunately, it meant that they had to lose Marcus Smart to the Grizzlies.
Let's just say this, Hank, that this was a shocker.
Yes.
This was something specifically where I saw this kind of floating around Twitter a little bit. I didn't really make much of it, but then it started to pick up steam over the course of the whole day when the trade happened. And obviously, Kristaps had a player. He had an option where he essentially had to accept or decline it by midnight. So essentially, with this trade kind of coming around, there's reports out saying that Kristaps Porzingis Shams had a framework tweet that he was going to go to the Celtics on a 3-team trade. Malcolm Brogdon was going to go to the Clippers, and then the Wizards were going to get, I think, Gallinari, Muscala, and some other guy specifically. I don't remember the rest of it from there. But then essentially we kind of got closer and closer towards the night, and reports out from Adrian Wojnarowski saying that the trade fell apart. And then we were kind of wondering, like, oh boy, is this even going to happen now? And essentially then he had a follow-up tweet saying that the Wizards and Celtics are still talking, which meant to me that something maybe from the third team or something else might have had a concern or something like that. Turned out to be that the Clippers were worried about Malcolm Brogdon's injury status that happened, as Malcolm Brogdon right now specifically is getting shoulder surgery after, I believe, an injury that he had in the playoffs last year. So a lot of things kind of, were trying to work out then, and then it came down to right around 11:50, right before midnight, got the tweet saying it's done. So, of course, I was going crazy. But then, of course, I was a little bit nervous in terms of the details. About 10 minutes later, I saw Marcus Smart was in this trade, and my face, Hank, was in disbelief. I mean, this was essentially, for me specifically, the last thing that I essentially was thinking on my mind about Marcus Smart, one of your key contributors, of this era. Even though this guy sometimes could drive me absolutely crazy, he's the heart and soul of this team, without a doubt. A guy that you want to have build around your team for so long, a guy that's been wanting to stay in Boston pretty much his whole entire career. And essentially, right after they had the Kristaps Porzingis trade to Boston, of course, without the third team, now with Malcolm Brogdon with the Clippers, now it's just a Wizards and a Celtics trade. And then the Grizzlies somehow got involved with this. And so Marcus Smart is going to Memphis. Tyus Jones is going to the Wizards. And then the Celtics not only get Kristaps Porzingis, but they get two, I think, first-round picks from Golden State. So lots of moving pieces around. In terms of my overall thoughts on this trade, though, Hank, I love it. I think really specifically Kristaps Porzingis had one of his best years last year in Washington. Brad Stevens was saying in the presser that he actually played two of his best games when the Wizards and Celtics played each other last season. I think that he's been kind of around for so long. I know he's had the injury status, the history in the past, but now reports out, a couple days ago that I've been reading is Kristaps really wanted to become a Celtic, and he felt like he wanted to become a Celtic because he has a good chance to win a championship. So, that obviously makes a lot of sense. Now, the thing about Kristaps is that I feel like you can use him as the number 4. You can use him as the 5. If you want to go double big, you can keep Al Horford there. You have Porzingis like the 5. Obviously, the other thing too with the Marcus Smart trade was I think that the ownership is really confident of Derek White's play at the playoffs last year. He played really well in the playoffs. Obviously, the tip in that could have changed things around after being down 3-0 over Miami. Game 6, of course, things I don't want to say the rest of it. But he had a major contributing part, not only offensively, but defensively. And I'm not saying that he's going to become the new heart and soul of the Celtics, but I think that they're going to have to make a lot of tough decision moves once Malcolm Brogdon couldn't be dealt. So they had to figure out, well, who's the scapegoat here? And unfortunately, specifically, Marcus Smart was a scapegoat. So I think now specifically in terms of leadership now, it's more on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown because they really have to be the leaders, really. I guess you can say they're the star players, of course, of the team. But I feel like now, it's going to be a team where essentially could be stepping up more as leaders after losing Marcus. Marcus as a whole as a guy specifically that's going to be really well missed. I know that we couldn't win a championship for him, and I know how much you really wanted it, but this is a guy specifically, it's going to be really hard to see not being in Celtic green this coming season. And, I'm going to be rooting for him. I'm going to be rooting for him hard because this was a guy that's been around for 8-9 years with the overall franchise. So he was around and, really did a lot not only on the court, but in the community in Boston too. So just an overall great overall player. And, it was tough. It took me a little bit to kind of decompress myself after the trade, kind of just put my overall thoughts in. And maybe a day or two after, it's just like thinking to me, wow, we really lost the heart and soul of this team. So now after kind of thinking a couple days about it, I still really like the trade. If you had to give me a grade, I'd probably give it probably a solid B because I think specifically I felt like the Celtics as a whole, they got 2 first-round picks from Marcus Smart. I think that Brad did pretty well on that considering all the circumstances. So I think Kristaps Porzingis can give us title favorites. I think specifically the team is still so deep, but you bring a guy to big man specifically, and where you can play a double big, you can use him, still in the starting lineup. You can go, White, you can go Tatum Brown, you can go Porzingis regardless of being the starting lineup. But you can kind of play around, and that's how deep the team is. So, of course, I think that obviously you get him out there, he stays healthy. This could be a really good trade for the Celtics in the long term. And I'm really excited to see what he could bring to the team.
Yeah, I think ultimately when it comes down to it, the Celtics obviously did win this trade because you weren't going to find a center like that on trees, for starters. And number two, I think like you alluded to, you have him, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown as your possible big three. I think that's definitely going to be huge for the Celtics. And now, obviously, there's still going to be questions about the salary cap going forward, but I think ultimately they're a pretty strong team. And this trade can especially be a win if somehow this Brad Stevens absolutely nails the other picks in this draft. If you know what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
with that being said, I do think losing Marcus Smart kind of hurts for pretty much the reason that you alluded to. I mean, this is a guy who's been in Boston for a long time. He was their heart and soul. So, but at the same time, to give, you have to get. And I think if you'd been able to make the original version of this trade, I think you really would have gotten the win. But nonetheless, it's hard for me to see any circumstances where Washington won this trade at all. I mean, let's face it, that team is in a perpetual state of rebuild. And then as far as the Memphis Grizzlies go, I think the question needs to be asked. Does this happen if a certain superstar doesn't decide to be an idiot and play with his weapons on social media, whether or not it's a toy gun?
I feel like Memphis has a lot of like, as much as love Marcus, who's a big mouth, right? And then you have John Moran, who's doing his thing. Dylan Brooks, guess who's on? He's a free agent, but in the past he was with Memphis. He was a big mouth too. So I think Memphis is looking at it, the ownership's just like, we'll take all the big mouths we can get who talk, and we'll make it part of our team. So I thought it was just really interesting to see that with that being the case. But no, I 100% agree with you. I mean, I think that with all certain circumstances, because when they had the first trade, the 3-team trade with the Clippers, I think they were probably aware in terms of, like, we're going to give this overall offer and see how it goes. And the Clippers want to agree to it. And they'll be like, okay, we'll play along with the surgery. Sign it. We'll be good. But I think at the other hand, we're just like, we're going to have a plan B. If they're going to decline it, we're going to have a fallback option. We're going to have another trade ready to go. Another thing, too, to keep in mind, I don't know if you knew about this, the Grizzlies had interest in Marcus Smart a couple of years ago before this. So they essentially had the eyes on Marcus for a couple of years when he still was with Boston. So I think specifically they kind of had something kind of ready to go, and Brad eventually kind of gave in and just like, we might have to make this, we might have to do this, and I guess Marcus was very shocked. He was very sad, discouraged in terms of how everything kind of went down, but he just kind of reflected on social media and kind of put stuff out. All of his teammates like Tatum was really close to Marcus and Jaylen. So obviously, with all things considered, I think that the Celtics did the best that they can do. It's really the definition of you won it, but what it cost, and that happens a lot in sports. A lot of times, specifically, in a perfect world, specifically you win, but a lot of the time, specifically, it comes at a specific cost. And of course, at this point in time, it came at a cost that's going to be missed in the leader. But I think I'm kind of ready also too to see also what the new guy comes in, and the new guy has been around the league for a while, and he's shown him over in New York he's had great years. Over in Washington he's had some really good years when he's healthy and around, and he had one of his best years last year. So I'm ready to give this guy a chance, and I'm excited to see what he can bring. I'm really excited for KP to come.
Yeah, definitely. And so let's move over and talk about the Damian Lillard report. According to a rumor from Chris Haynes, Damian Lillard and his agent were meeting with the Blazers to discuss the direction that the team is going. And look, I think it's interesting that they drafted Henderson with Damian Lillard still in the fold. And looking at this report, I'm not sure how much of this I buy into.
Same. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a day in, day out, there's stuff on Twitter from Chris Haynes or somebody else saying, well, he's evaluating, there could be, I had a viral video that Dame's been going on Instagram Live, been saying some Miami stuff, in terms of the music that was playing on at the end of the day, specifically, unless it comes out of Dame Lillard's mouth in terms of requesting, I want out of here, I'm not buying into a lot of it. I mean, I trust a lot of these guys specifically. I trust Haynes. I trust all these guys. So obviously you'll look into it for a little bit, but I mean, you look at it right now. I mean, they got Scoot. They got Scoot for the third overall pick. In terms to me, they also, I think, drafted another guard. So I think specifically Portland's in a specific state now where, we have our ready plan to go for young guys. I think specifically for Dame, Dame. Well, I read something else today that Dame doesn't want to play with like a super team. He wants to try to win like on his own. Let's be real though, he's not going to be winning with a stacked Western Conference. You feel like you can win on your own if you couldn't do it already, and you also had CJ McCollum, who's a really good player, but you're gonna eventually have to kind of give in. Essentially, I mean, loyalty comes to a cost. You look at Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal was loyal for so long in Washington. Look where he is now. And obviously, he joined a super team, but he's joined a specific place where it feels like he could win now. And now he's in a better overall state because of it. I feel like with Damian Lillard, he's still in a standstill at this point in time where, I have to kind of twiddle my thumbs and kind of see where things go. It's like the Aaron Rodgers situation in the NBA. It feels like it's an ongoing story. Like, we get it, bro. Like, enough's enough. Like, you're a great talent. You're a great star. I love Dame time and stuff like that. But just make up your mind. You could stay and just say, I'm staying, and not let, all this other BS or whatever this stuff is coming out, start to pick up steam where fans and stuff are going to be like, okay, what's going on? What's going on? Let's just make it clear at this point in time in terms of what's your direction. So with this overall tweet, do I buy a little bit? Of course. But on the other side too, I don't, because I'm going to feel like I've been seeing constant stuff left and right of this, and it just feels like it's just either goes nowhere or there's just more to it. That's essentially a lot of the same stuff. So I don't really know. I don't really know specifically at this point in time. I said at first maybe that he was going to stick around. There's stuff here and there. There's like, okay, he can leave. So it's just really kind of all up in the air, at least to me right now.
Yeah, I think this is really, again, just a little bit of a smokescreen. I mean,
exactly.
Damian Lillard pretty much isn't really going to go anywhere. I'm not sure if he's necessarily like helping himself by staying with the Portland Trail Blazers, but all it really is to me is just a story for the sake of, making a story, if, I'm making sense here.
Yeah.
But speaking of big NBA stories, I think the last thing we should talk about with regards to the NBA would be the free agency market. And we've got some big names lining the NBA free agency. Obviously, James Harden tops the list. He's got a player option, and he was with the Philadelphia 76ers the past year and a half. And, say what you want about James Harden and what he did in the playoffs. I think he was a guy that really, kind of helped Joel Embiid win that MVP. He was another good playmaker that they had, and another good free agent out there. Obviously, we talked about Draymond Green, and I don't know where the Warriors stand with regards to, how many more titles they have. But with that being said, Draymond was a very big part of their dynasty for sure. And whoever he goes to is going to be gaining a big leader. And got to mention Fred VanVleet with the Toronto Raptors, and who knows where he could go, but I would say he definitely will have a lot of teams looking at him, as well as Austin Reeves, the Lakers, and Dylan Brooks should also be an interesting case. He was a loudmouth with the Memphis Grizzlies and couldn't quite back up his trash talk during that series. Yeah, that was a guy who started something he obviously could not finish. But, what are your big thoughts on the NBA free agents, Ben?
Yeah, it should be really exciting coming on Friday when it starts to open up, I think at like 5 or 6 p.m. But I'm not sure specifically in terms of the time, but yeah, I mean, I know that there's already kind of activity going on as of right now. Porzingis, going to Boston. Chris Paul, obviously, which we'll talk about a little bit too. He went to Golden State. He's going to be teaming up with Steph Curry and stuff like that. I know that he got waived, but you kind of already seen some of the traction going on before kind of the big overall fireworks, I guess you can say. Hint, hint, there's fireworks coming up pretty soon with July 4th, so maybe there's a little bit of fireworks coming up with this, which should be exciting because NBA offseason never sleeps. But I think specifically with Harden, he's going to be a free agent, and I think specifically that I feel like he's going to be 50-50 in terms of if he leaves or not. I think that he still has some loyalty to Philly, but now there's also rumors that he might go back to Houston. So I don't know specifically in terms of where he's going to go with there. Van Fleet, I think, is going to be gone. I think he had a great run in Toronto, but I think that he's going to go somewhere. He's going to get probably paid at big time, maybe a team like Brooklyn. I think they're going to kind of maybe see specifically what happens with Dame. And then Dylan Brooks, he'll probably be gone. I think that specifically that Memphis has Marcus Smart now. He can kind of take on the new role. Brooks is a good defensive player. He could shoot as much as he's a talker. He can help a team out for sure. That maybe a young team that might be needed. John Collins, Hank. I don't know if you were aware of John Collins. He got traded today. He went to Utah.
Yes, I did hear about that.
Fortunately, it's actually full circle where the Celtics were really interested in with John Collins for a couple of years, and then the former ownership, Danny Ainge, who now is part of Utah, he gets John Collins today. So crazy things happen. And so he's going to Utah. I think that helps out with guys like Larry Markkinen, Wesley Kessler. So I think that there's going to be a lot of great traction around the league. A lot of great shooters out there. Draymond Green, of course. I think that's 50-50 in terms of he goes back to Golden State or he goes out there and tries something different. So in terms of the Celtics, they got Payne Pritchard coming up, free agency. They got Grant Williams. So they got some guys off the bench. I mean, Malcolm Brogdon, I'm not sure what they're going to do with him. We'll kind of find out more probably at the end of this weekend. So I know that there's still going to be a lot of rumors out there. With your Knicks, Hank, what happens with the futures of guys like Julius Randle and RJ Barrett? I know that they're probably going to stick around, but if they go out and get like a Zach LaVine, we didn't even mention Zach LaVine. He's going to be a free agent. He's going to probably be moved at some point. We just don't know where. DeMar DeRozan, I feel like teams like the Bulls are going to be rebuilding, so they're going to try to unload some of their money in. They might have to make some moves. The NBA as a whole, Hank, too, is there's some players out there you don't feel like they're going to get moved, but then a couple days, coming into it, they ask out. It's a drama, I guess you could say, where things just come out of nowhere, and then there's things you feel like you could expect. So it should be really exciting coming up this weekend, and I can't wait to see where things go from there, and all the rumors, all the fun stuff. I'm always up for the chaos.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I have a feeling we're going to be checking our phones like a lot during work as we get to the NBA free agency because. Yeah, a lot of big stuff that is going to be interesting, and I'm definitely intrigued to see the direction of the Knicks with regards to Julius Randle and RJ Barrett for sure, but like the direction that they're going, and I agree. I can't quite see Van Vliet leaving or staying in Toronto, and as far as James Harden goes, I feel like the Sixers are just going to find a way to overpay for him because I believe that he was a big reason as to why Joel Embiid ended up being an MVP. But in any event, let's move over to baseball. And I'm sorry, but I think you know exactly what's coming. We know that Aaron Judge just got hurt again. And I think there's a banner that might need to go up because I'm feeling a certain way about this whole thing. Yeah, there may or may not be a rant alert coming from yours truly, but all I'm going to say is, for starters, there's no way the Yankees couldn't have just known about this until Aaron Judge made the announcement. I mean, if you heard in the media that they kept saying, he's going to be coming back soon, like progress is being made, And then all of a sudden for him to say, that the ligament is being torn, like, I have a bad feeling that the Yankees were essentially lying to us all along, and that this was a case of medical malpractice, so to speak. And now, if this is as severe as we think, this is an injury that could essentially cost the Yankees big time, because you are without your MVP and the guy that has essentially carried the offense over the course of the season. Now, granted, don't get me wrong, Stanton and Rizzo have been awful since Aaron Judge got hurt. In fact, up until recently, Stanton was hitting probably close to 100 without Judge. That's how bad he was. And Rizzo, same thing. Like, I think those guys definitely benefit from having Aaron Judge in the lineup, because he essentially provides them protection in the batting order.
Definitely.
Is what he does. Now with him out, and you look at the way this offense is, I mean, and look, I'm glad they took 2 out of 3 against the Texas Rangers.
That's good. That's great.
You know what they say about winning curing all. No, the problems that I ranted about after you guys swept us that weekend have not exactly gone away. The Yankees are still a team that's pretty close to being at the bottom in terms of on-base percentage. In fact, I'm going to look up the Yankees on-base percentages right now just to really give you an idea as to how bad it really is. So let's look at the guys over here, shall we? Jose Trevino, 259. Anthony Rizzo is the only one that's above, is the only healthy player in the lineup that's above 330, and his is 353. But then again, he also had that slump, so take that for what it's worth. The closest is Gleyber Torres, who's at 322, and pretty much everybody else that I'm about to mention is under 300. You're going to tell me I should take the team that has guys who don't really get on base all that well seriously? Like, come on now. The Yankees essentially are screwed. And the only other reason as to why they are above 500, besides the fact that Aaron Judge, helped them a lot in the early part of the season, let's look at the pitching staff. Garrett Cole is 8-1 with a 2.78 ERA. Now, I understand he hasn't had his best outing in his last start, but he's been carrying a rotation, and you look at the numbers of everybody else, it's pretty obvious that he's been an anchor, and it's amazing that we also have a really good bullpen, although the only way you can really get to that bullpen is if, you have a lead or it's a close game. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm sorry. This really is not a good baseball team. And if that ligament, that torn ligament is as bad as we think it is, yeah, this is not going to be a fun summer for yours truly going to games in the Bronx.
I'll say a couple things about this side.
Go for it.
As a Red Sox fan myself, Aaron Judge is a fantastic player. He's the MVP. I like him a lot. He is somebody specifically that, you want your team at all times. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, specifically too, the Yankees obviously taking 2 out of 3 this past weekend was good, and in terms of way where, Texas is a really good ball club, and the way that the Yankees were stumbling going into this past weekend, I thought that the Rangers probably would have won this weekend. I know that they maybe were overachieving maybe for a little bit, but they were an awesome ball club offensively. The Yankees specifically won really a lot of the series because of their pitching, but One guy specifically, Hank, that I think should help the cause in terms of without Judge is Harrison Bader. I think that he at least gives the team a little life in a way, a little bit of spark. Rizzo, Stanton, I just don't know specifically, Hank. When you have Judge, right, you have protection, you got better pitches to see. Another thing, too, is when you have Judge out there, the other guys specifically that try to carry the load maybe press a little too much. And you see that in terms of maybe with Rizzo, or you see with Stanton. So I think it's going to be a lot of ups and flows, specifically with the Yanks, Hank, in terms of the offense. But it's going to be tough, without Judge for a long extended period of time. I mean, think about it this way, Hank. I mean, if Judge left your Yanks, this would be kind of what the Yanks would maybe be like down the road, which is a scary sight to think. But now you're kind of in that position now, and it's just like, so, as much as Judge is great, and I hope that he comes back. Really, all things considered, as a Sox fan, I really hope that he comes back. Hopefully by when we play him in August, but we'll see how things go with terms of his healing. But the one thing about this injury, Hank, is that the ownership, I think, didn't want to have a guy where they wanted to be scapegoated. And, the media was asking, so how's Aaron Judge doing? How's doing? And I felt like they were kind of repeating themselves in a way in terms of because, like, oh, this person said that he had this person. And then eventually it's just like, well, Aaron Judge, I guess I'm going to have to say it myself, right? I just don't feel like specifically as an organization, some guy essentially is going to have to say it out to the media. And nobody did. They're all just kind of hiding behind the scenes. And it was like, yeah, we hope that he'll come back, and fans are just thinking like, we need an answer. So essentially Aaron Judge said it, and now fans are just like, okay, we get in terms of what happened. And then essentially after that he said he tore a ligament, where did this come from? So because the media and the people out on the ownership, they didn't say a word because they were too worried that they're going to get all the backlash, which they've essentially already had with other stuff that's going on with the team.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not been a fun time as a Yankee fan this year. And again,
sorry, hold on to your thought. And one other thing too, specifically with Josh Donaldson, right? With what I just saw yesterday, that Aaron Boone had someone ready to go for, they had a talk or whatever about Josh Donaldson, and he was playing for a couple of days. So all these Yankee fans are getting their hopes up. Oh, this can be a DFA candidate, ready to go. And in my mind, specifically as a Sox fan, I think that he was ready. I mean, heck, he was getting the Aaron Hicks treatment, and look what happened to Aaron Hicks. He's all gone. But then Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone go on to say, no, we think that Josh Donaldson is a big part to our ball club. He's going to win us a lot of games. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You look at what's going on there, and Hank, I'll let you take it away from here because I'm sorry, my guy, but man, after what's going on, the Judge stuff and what he was saying about that, I don't even know how to comprehend. After a couple days, specifically benching him, and then we're gonna give him a couple days to bench. What's gonna make it work? And then thinking he's gonna win all these games. I mean, heck, Josh Donaldson he's a waste of money, and I'm sorry to admit that, but he's a waste of money for you guys.
Waste of money, Ben. He is washed. 100%. And again, guess what? Guess what? I was in favor of the trade when it happened. How stupid do I look now? I mean, to be fair, we did get rid of Gary Sanchez, and you may recall that back when I started a certain baseball show, you may have heard of it. It's called Hitting for the Cycle. It may or may not make a return on this network. The timetable to be determined, but that's a story for another day. I roasted the shit out of Gary Sanchez. I did. And again, you can go back and watch some of the old episodes. You can find the archives. I said that he was not a good catcher. And guess what? I still stand by that, even though he's doing a little bit better with the San Diego Padres, and he got off to kind of a hot start. I'm sorry. I'm still taking Jose Trevino, even with his 220 batting average and 250 on base percentage. At least he knows how to, at least that guy knows how to pitch frame. At least that guy can block balls. The fact that you made a deal with the devil by trading Gary Sanchez and essentially you use Giovanni Urshela as the sacrificial lamb. And now, granted, I know Urshela is out for the season, and he got a serious injury for the Angels.
Hope he's okay.
Are you if you're telling me that you wouldn't take Giovanni Urshela over Josh Donaldson right now, and you're looking me straight in the eye and telling me this, you're out of your mind. Like, this is a guy in his mid late 30s, and you're essentially paying what's called the Gary Sanchez tax to him. That trade couldn't have backfired any worse if you'd even tried. And why would you want to try, honestly? And then the other catcher they got in return, like, he turned out to be, damaged goods. You didn't really see Ben Rortvedt play much, so...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't really know how the Yankees could essentially win that trade. And not to mention, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, he's been iffy, to say the least. So, no. Josh Donaldson is a waste.
IKF, I think, said his moments better this year. I feel like...
No, he's been better. He's been good on the bases, and I wish he had dove for that ball during the game we lost against Texas, by the way. That was bad. But at the same time, I also blame Anthony Volpe for, not going after the ball instead of just stopping and letting the center fielder try to catch it. Like, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but go look at the highlights of the Yankees loss against Texas. It cost them a run. Essentially, that cost them the game, so to speak.
Also, the play where Donaldson bobbled the ball and then Herman overthrew him, and then the guy on Texas scored after that. I think it might have been I think it was the Seattle game. It might have been the game before. I'm just like, I couldn't help but laugh. I mean, I'm just like, what is this? What is this? That felt like the Red Sox so year last year with their defense. I mean, they're making some bad plays here, miscues here and there, but I'm just like, hey. We might not be the. I mean, heck, look at the Mets. The Mets right now with their defense. I mean, they're an absolute clown show right now. So, with their payroll and stuff like that,
Again, what is it with the New York teams and bad fundamentals?
I wish I knew the answer to that.
Or, as Keith Hernandez would call them, bad fundies. Yeah, no, I don't really need to talk more about my own pinstripe team, despite the fact that I'm wearing my Tony Gwynn shirt right now. But let's move on to the MLB around the league, because there are a lot of good stories that really aren't talked about enough right now. And one of them is Luis Arias of the Miami Marlins. Right now, as of this recording, he's hitting .399. Ben, I don't know if it's going to happen, but he is having a historic season where he's flirting with 400. And it's fitting that I'm wearing my Tony Gwynn shirt, actually, because Tony Gwynn
I was about to say
was the last player that came close to hitting 400. He hit .394 at the time of the strike in '94. And he's been a good part of what has been a really fun Miami Marlins team.
Yeah, I mean, Miami is really pretty much still within the race, and Arise. I remember that overall move where I thought it was very interesting in terms of why Minnesota traded them, but Minnesota was in a starting pitching, needed help. Miami has a lot of great young pitching, so they felt that both sides can make something work where Minnesota could get some more pitching and Miami could get some more hitting. And it's been, I would say for the most part, I mean, I haven't looked at Pablo Lopez the last couple starts. He hasn't been as great as the early part, but I would say for the most part, it's been a win-win. I feel like right now Miami probably has the edge in terms of who has more in terms of the trade. But, I mean, yeah, he's been unbelievable. I mean, that's essentially a guy that you would need on your team that doesn't have to hit for power, right? There's some guys specifically that could just straight rake. You don't always have to hit the home runs, right? You obviously have to, and, for average stuff, but he's batting .390, 400. I mean, this guy he's a lock to make the All-Star team. I mean, right? Yes. He's a guy specifically that, manager looks at right now. Oh, yeah, how's this guy doing the first half? Oh, yeah, not too shabby, 400. You don't see that often, right? You see maybe guys in the 320s, 330s, 400, especially in terms of how long he's going for. Yeah, that's been a great story. And I'd be curious to see how long, obviously, he can kind of be around that pace for, which obviously, as a long season, I doubt is going to happen. But it's been impressive nonetheless because you just never see guys at this point in terms of their overall season have the success in terms of staying up there in average as long as a guy like he's doing right now. So it's been really cool to watch.
Yeah, definitely. And another good pitcher to note for Miami is Yuri Perez, who is a rookie who is now 5-1 with a 1.34 ERA, 0.98 WHIP. Now, obviously, I think the guy might fall back down to earth, but there are definitely big reasons as to why Miami is like making strides to have their first playoff season in a non-COVID year since 2003. It's been crazy to say the least, and I think Miami definitely could be a good story come playoff time. But speaking of good stories, I also want to kind of talk about the Cincinnati Reds. I mean, hey, 12 wins in a row, and even though they lost this weekend to the Atlanta Braves, they still only lost by like 1 run. It's not like they got clobbered. They battled for sure, and Eli De La Cruz has been an absolutely phenomenal watch. He's, fun fact, the first Red to hit for the cycle since 1989. I believe
that cycle.
Yes, see what I did there.
I was about sorry.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Eric Davis was the last Red to hit for the cycle. Given how talented he was, that would definitely make a lot of sense. But yeah, 12 in a row. They're now in first place in a division that nobody wants. I mean, the Pirates were a team that was somebody to watch like at the beginning, but they've pretty much fallen back down to earth. They lost 12 of their last 13 and haven't really been scoring a lot of runs, but I'm hoping Henry Davis does well since to me, he's a local kid. He went to Fox Lane High School, and I actually saw him play back when he was in high school too. So that's pretty cool that he got his first major league home run.
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at it right now, the Reds have been an incredible story. This is a team from afar that I've wanted to obviously succeed for a long period of time. But the one guy specifically that has to be absolutely going crazy right now is Joey Votto. I mean, Joey Votto has been around that club for so long, and he's gone through so many bad years after bad years after bad years. And there's even talks of maybe him going to be traded to like a team like Toronto, where obviously he's from Canada and stuff like that, and all this stuff. And now you look at it, they had Jonathan India, they had some like young kids. They're like, okay, they have some promise. Now you bring a kid in Elly De La Cruz from AAA, and obviously at first I'm just like, he'll probably give them a spark, But no, Hank, I mean, he's turning this whole thing around. And, I know that the NL Central hasn't been great this year, but, they went on an absolute insane run in terms of the overall play. And I don't get the chance to watch all of the games against the Braves, but every single game I was seeing highlights and stuff, home run after home run from a guy like a Spencer Steer, Matt McClain, all these young kids that are just making production after production. I think the Reds definitely have a chance to make the playoffs. I mean, this is not, I feel like at this point, a fluke. I mean, they played against essentially one of the NL favorites right now in Atlanta, who is still a really good team, and they were right up there. I mean, I had Braves fans that are looking online saying, I don't want to play this team anymore. That's how worried. I mean, for a team like the Reds who were bad for so long, I think that's really cool to kind of see their come up. And Elly De La Cruz for sure is a must-watch. He's like, when Fernando Tatis came into the league, everybody was kind of pointing. This is kind of now the new must-watch, and that's Elly De La Cruz. I mean, the guy specifically, there's ground balls that he's hitting to first base, and he's getting singles off. I mean, his overall tools are incredible to watch. So it's been must-watch. If it's not Ohtani you're watching, or you're not watching Judge, you're not watching. Watch this kid, because he is an impressive future for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when you have Joey Votto comparing him to Mickey Mantle, that's a pretty big deal, even though I think I think that's too big of a stretch. You know how I feel about comparing players to legends. So,
oh yeah.
Other teams that definitely have been interesting, I would say. You look at the NL West. That's been a really compelling race. You have it's been 3-team race between the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks, and the Giants, and the Dodgers definitely rebounded after getting absolutely humiliated by the Giants. Freddie Freeman actually got his 2000th hit.
Yep.
And then you also have the Diamondbacks getting a lot of unlikely seasons from guys like Lourdes Gurriel, Christian Walker, and Geraldo Perdomo. And then you have Ketel Marte contributing, but I think one of the big stories of the Diamondbacks is Corbin Carroll, who very well could win the Rookie of the Year and the MVP simultaneously. He's had that big of an impact on the Diamondbacks. Now, I think the question is, are they going to cool off at some point? Is this start really sustainable for them?
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing about the Diamondbacks, Hank, is they've gotten pretty good production out of their starting rotation. 2 guys that have been great this year. Obviously, Zach Gallen is a guy specifically that a lot of teams would love to have. I mean, he is an NL Cy Young candidate. I mean, he has a lot of great stuff, for a team that doesn't get a lot of talk. And then Merrill Kelly. Merrill Kelly is a guy that pitched actually just for USA this past World Baseball Classic, and he wasn't great when I saw him pitching overall on TV for that, but as a stuff overall, I think it plays for sure. So, I mean, not only that they're getting contributions with their bats, but they're getting, pitching-wise, those 2 guys have been great this year. So, I think specifically they probably will call off a little bit, but, you look at those teams right now, that race should be really fun to watch the second half.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And don't forget about the Giants either. They have fun fact, the Giants have actually have the best record in baseball since May 1st. Remember when they started off 6-13 on the year?
Yeah. That Giants team last year had a lot of high hopes, and they really disappointed. So I think this year they're kind of trying to replicate what they had last year, but kind of to the expectations a lot of people had in mind.
Their pitching staff is filthy. Mm-hmm. Alex Wood, Logan Webb.
Yep.
To name a few.
They also have
Camilo Doval as their closer.
Yep, Duval.
Absolutely lights out.
They the Giants actually play your Yankees. That's crazy that the Giants play you guys the first series of the season. The Red Sox play. Yeah, the Red Sox get the chance to go to San Francisco. I believe in July. So that's a really fun trip.
We're running a little short on time, so let's wrap it up. We've got a few more topics left. Number 1, so I'm sure you probably heard your Boston Bruins traded Taylor Hall to the Chicago Blackhawks, and they also traded Nick Foligno in there, and in return, they got 2 defensemen, and I have a feeling I kind of know what you're going to say, but Ben, who do you think won this trade?
Taking my bias aside specifically, the Bruins essentially had to make some tough decisions. They're in a deep cap hell after being in one of the best teams, the whole regular season. Postseason, I will not talk about, but that's another story for another day. The Taylor Hall, I think, was one guy specifically that I could definitely see them move on from. And the one big reason why was the trade that the Bruins made the mid part of the season with Tyler Bertuzzi and the production that they felt in the second half. There's no corresponding move this Taylor Hall trade if they know that something's coming. And I think that's what they're going to come with is they had to come at a cost. Hint, hint, at a cost. And this is the move specifically where the Blackhawks, I think, won this trade. But I think on the long haul, with the Bruins still ready to win now, the Bruins won this in a way where if they could keep Tyler Bertuzzi, I call this fair enough. All games, on the side of the Blackhawks won this in terms of the talent, but and I'm going to miss Hall. I'm going to miss Foligno. They're 2 great players. They have their own skill set for sure. But I think specifically with the way that the Bruins are financially and they're still in deep cap hell, they had to make something happen. So I think Bertuzzi now they can free up some money to keep him, and so I hope that that's the overall move. After this trade happened.
Yeah, definitely. The thing about this trade is it looks to me like it's a pure salary cap dump move. And unfortunately, when you trade guys for that purpose, you don't tend to get a lot back. However, with regards to the Chicago Blackhawks, I think it's good for them to have a good amount of veteran pieces to help a team that's in a rebuild, and definitely some talent to surround around Connor Bedard, the potential first-round draft pick. But I don't know that he's necessarily going to be a long-term player for the Chicago Blackhawks, but I think this move was really more about the Boston Bruins getting rid of a player that they knew they would have to pay than it necessarily was about the Blackhawks getting somebody for, talent purposes and trying to like contend. Because I think the Blackhawks know they're not going to contend. They essentially just said, "Hey, we'll take them off your hands. Get the leader to surround our nice young talent with." Essentially, is what they did.
And the crazy thing about this Bruins team is they still have more moves coming. I mean, I read a tweet today from some guy that I trust pretty well that they expect to have more moves coming, which to me right now, because NHL free agency is coming up pretty soon too, outside the NBA. So the Bruins are kind of have to get ready in terms of some guys that they can move on from, so they can kind of have their money straight and stuff like that when the off season, and when they can start making some moves from guys out there that, well, I know the Flames are moving on some guys that I'd like to see. Elias Lindholm, maybe a guy like him. Time will tell about that. But yeah, Bruins are definitely in their start of their off season, for sure. So it should be fascinating.
Absolutely. And lastly, I heard you were at the Travelers Championship. Tell us about your experience there.
Yeah, so I don't know how much golf you talk about off the air here in terms of on your overall network, but I just want to say specifically that I went to the Travelers Championship. Being from Connecticut, it's always a must if you've never been to before, at least in the New England area. People from Massachusetts, I saw in Massachusetts and Vermont, Rhode Island. It's a great event in Hartford. I had to go about an hour yesterday out of my way, not too far away, nothing crazy, but. Just to see a lot of the great field of golfers out there. I mean, guys like Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, John Rahm, unfortunately missed the cut, but he is one of the best a top 5 golfer in the PGA rankings. But just the overall people being there, just the overall vibe is great. Great food, great stuff for the kids. And going on the final round, I've gone to the last couple of years, like yesterday. Weather was great. It turned out to be a lot better than it originally was earlier part of this past week. So that was awesome. A little bit of thunder here and there, but obviously they didn't shut it down, which is great to see. So great event. Keegan Bradley won it. Congrats to him. He's actually a New England guy, so he won it specifically in New England, which was awesome. So I'm really happy for him. And it's a course that a lot of great players love to play at. So great overall event. One with my brother, and looking forward to hopefully going back again next year, because it's been now a yearly type thing that tradition-wise, at least for the summer, which I love going to. So it was great to see it yesterday, and can't wait for it to be back up again.
That sounds like a lot of fun, and I know I'm not really one of the bigger fans of golf, but we love hearing about our members going to like a lot of these big sporting events. So definitely looks more like an event that I'd enjoy if I watched it in person, but I'm glad you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, it was awesome. And definitely I'd recommend it to anybody who's into golf or just in sports to go see it. The atmosphere is great, and it's a great, great time.
Well, anyways, that'll about wrap it up for episode 60. Still can't get that thought out of my head of Game On. And folks, let me remind you guys once again, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameOnETB, and on Instagram at GameOn_ETB. Follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network at ETB Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And of course, follow our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network. Please don't forget to hit that big red button down below. And then last but not least, please follow the website, etbpodcast.com, for some great blogs and more information as well. And folks, that'll just about wrap it up for episode 60 of Game On. That's Ben Kruse. I'm Hank Indictor, and I will see you guys next time.